What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Nick, and I hope you guys are doing well whenever you are checking out the latest video here on the channel. Today, we have another fantastic tier list for you guys. This one I am very excited to present to you guys, as this is going to be a tier list dedicated to some of the best TV actors and actresses out there. Of course, we have had plenty of great tier lists on this channel in the past, whether it's TV or music based. And today we are focusing in on the actors here because traditionally, when we talk about TV on this channel, we talk about the shows themselves, even the networks at times, but the actors just as important, if not more, in certain situations there. And we have a bevy of various ones here, about 30 of them that we are going to go over on this tier list here. The main criteria that I'm going to be using in judging these different performers on this tier list are three simple factors: their raw talent, the way that they perform these characters, the emotion they bring to these performances, the shows in question that they're on, if I enjoy them or if they're not really my style, and then finally their versatility here. If they constitute all three of the major genres: drama, comedy, and animation, using a voiceover performance there. That is what I'm looking for today's tier list here. We have them all in alphabetical order here. Without any more delays, let's jump right into it here, beginning with one of my all-time favorite actresses from How I Met Your Mother, primarily Alyson Hannigan here. Of course, Him Yim is probably her best known role as Lily on that show that she performed for 9 seasons. One of my favorite characters on the show, as well as Buffy the Vampire Slayer as Willow there. And then for her third show, I'm using at least 3 for each of these actors as well, by the way. We have Free Spirit. Now, unfortunately, if you saw the filing filmography episode on How I Met Your Mother, you know that Free Spirit is not a very good show at all. I am not a fan of that one. Definitely a big miss for Alyson Hannigan's performance there. But the other two, I think, are very strong. So overall, I think that's going to balance out here. We're going to give her an A1 tier. If not for Free Spirit, probably would be in the God tier status there. But unfortunately, Free Spirit is definitely going to drop her just a little bit there. I think A1 is a solid rank for her. Next up here, we have Ashton Kutcher here, primarily known for his work on That 70s Show as Michael Kelso. Probably my favorite performance on the entire series there. But the other 2 shows I have for him definitely are going to drop him pretty significantly here. 2.5 Men, the last 4 seasons. Of course, he was one of the leads there as Walden after Charlie left. And then we also have The Ranch here, which was a show he did with fellow That 70s Show co-star Danny Masterson for Netflix there. And that's another one that just did not work at all. 2.5 Men in particular, the last few seasons with Ashton Kutcher, I think are some of the worst TV out there, period. In any genre, any era of TV, I cannot stand those seasons at all. And The Ranch was very disappointing. That show just tried to be very meta. It brought a bunch of the people from That 70s Show on it as guest stars and was just kind of cheesy, over the top. Did not really enjoy the story on that one at all. So for me, as much as I absolutely love Kelso, this one is going to be a little frustrating because I would want to put him higher, but because of those other 2 shows that he was on, I'm going to have to put him in the bad tier, unfortunately. Ashton Kutcher there, our next actor up. Following him, one of the big ticket actors for today's list, Mr. Bryan Cranston, up on the tier list next. Of course, known as Walter White on Breaking Bad there, alongside all those other fantastic characters like Jesse, Hank, Skyler as well. Walter White on Breaking Bad there, a true fan favorite. We also have him as Hal on Malcolm in the Middle. That was one of his first big roles there as the father there. And then for his third show, honestly, you could pick a few other various sitcoms that he had reoccurring characters for, whether it be How I Met Your Mother, The King of Queens, Seinfeld. All would be great choices there. For me, I'm going to put him next to Alyson Hannigan here at the A1 tier. I do do think that he is just a little bit overrated. I will admit that. I do think that his performances at times are just a tad overhyped there. I totally understand, again, his just raw talent there, especially in the dramatic performances there. I think some of his comedy, though, isn't up to par with where he can peak at. I think some of his versatility is a little bit overhyped, like I said, but overall, still a fantastic actor there, A1 tier for Mr. Bryan Cranston. Following him, we have Cobie Smulders here, another one from How I Met Your Mother there. That's, of course, her biggest role as Robin Scherbatsky, but she's also been on plenty of great dramas such as Stumptown and American Crime Story Impeachment, as well as some other comedies like Friends from College as well on Netflix there. And she's another one that's going to go in the A1 tier. Really no complaints about her. I think she's pretty versatile. I don't like any of her individual characters as much as some of the other ones comparatively on some of the shows. I don't think Robin's as good as Lily in my opinion, but I know that's pretty unpopular, so feel free to discuss in the comments there. But overall, like I said, very, very solid actress as well. I think A1 tier is very suitable for her. Following her, we have another comedy legend here in the form of David Spade. Now, I'm not including Saturday Night Live for any of these actors. I definitely could for a few of these, but I think SNL is not really in the same ballpark as some of these other shows we're talking about. More scripted, primetime, narrative-driven shows here primarily. So David Spade here for his three. I have Rules of Engagement, Just Shoot Me, and 8 Simple Rules, all fantastic comedies that he did all throughout the 2000s there. And for me, he's going to go in the great tier. I do think his versatility is a little bit lacking here. Definitely does not have any major dramatic performances, so that's going to bring him down a little bit. But like I said, he does what he does very, very well with the comedy there. Probably my favorite character of his has to be Russell from Rules of Engagement. Always made me laugh. Definitely brought a lot of the humor to that show. And overall, a very, very funny guy there, David Spade in the great tier. Following him, we have Elizabeth Moss next up. Now, she is an absolute darling when it comes to these critical, huge primetime shows in the drama genre here, from Mad Men to The West Wing to The Handmaid's Tale most recently. Her shows are just absolutely impeccable when it comes to the quality that dramas can do. All of them in the top 100 ranked shows from that video back last summer. And I can definitely see why. I haven't seen enough of all of these to really make a true assessment of her characters properly. I've only seen little bits and pieces, but from what I can gather, she is definitely a very, very well-suited actress for many of those roles there. I'm going to put her in the great tier as well. Again, some people could put her a little bit higher there, but I just haven't seen enough to really be as familiar with her as some of these other ones. But from what I've gathered, definitely a very solid performer nonetheless. Elizabeth Moss there in the great category. Following her, our first of a few that primarily work on animated shows here, we have H. Jon Benjamin, one of the most distinctive voices in all of TV, whether it's on Bob's Burgers or Archer or Home Movies. Those are probably his top 3 when it comes to just the popularity vote for his shows. And for me, definitely Bob Belcher on Bob's Burgers there is my favorite of his characters. That very distinct, sort of deep-throated growl that he has with some of his characters there. Super iconic as well. I'm going to put him in the great tier alongside these other two, kind of rounding out those main genres, like I said there. Again, the versatility there is going to drop him down a little bit here. Definitely does not have any dramatic performances or anything like that. Very, very few live action performances as well. So that's going to hurt him a little bit. But outside of that, he does what he does very, very well there. If you need a great voiceover actor, he is the guy to call. Great, great performer in my opinion. Following him next up, we have Mr. Jason Segel here, another one from, of course, How I Met Your Mother, and some great dramas from back in the day. We also have Freaks and Geeks and Undeclared as well for him, and without a doubt, he is going to be our first person in the God tier category here. Without a doubt, one of my all-time favorites. Marshall on How I Met Your Mother, super iconic, super lovable, fan favorite character there. And then again, Nick on Freaks and Geeks as well, probably my favorite character from that show. Undeclared, I haven't seen as much of it, but from what I gathered as well, he's definitely a very solid performer on that one too. Easily one of my favorites, like I said, God tier without a doubt for Jason Segel. Following him, we have another God tier performer. If you are familiar with the Dick Wolf shows like I am, then this is going to be a very recognizable face, Mr. Jeremy Sisto here, primarily known for his work on Law and Order, FBI, 6 Feet Under, so many great dramas as well. He also did the short-lived Suburgatory, which I think is very, very underrated as one of the best sitcoms from the early 2010s there. But like I said, primarily for the Dick Wolf shows like Law and Order and FBI there. FBI in particular easily holds my favorite character that he's done, Jubal Valentine. Absolutely love him on that. And then on the original Law and Order as well, with Cyrus Lupo alongside Anthony Anderson. They had great chemistry together. Very, very excited to see if possibly he will return for the revival. Definitely some talks about that as well. Would love to see him on there. He is one of my favorites, as you can tell by his God tier status. Following Mr. Jeremy Sisto there, we have another guy who is a comedy legend in my eyes. Very nostalgic pick for me here with Mr. Josh Peck, of course known for the lovable Josh Nichols on Drake and Josh there. One of the best performers on that show and one of the best comedies of our generation there growing up in the early 2000s there with all the great Dan Schneider classics. But he's also done some other good comedies in the past few years, such as Grandfathered with John Samos, was a very underrated show, and recently on How I Met Your Father as well with the reoccurring character of Drew, who is currently the main love interest of Hilary Duff's character on that show, and I've been really enjoying that one as well. He was also on The Amanda Show, another sketch show, but like I said, similar to SNL, as we talked about earlier, not exactly counting those because that's not really a serialized show, but those other main comedies definitely suit him very well. I'm going to go with A1 tier, like I said. Mainly versatility, again, is the only thing keeping him away from that God tier status. But like I said, very, very nostalgic pick here. Absolutely love Josh Peck and some of those classic sitcoms he did. He is a great performer as well. Next up, we have an absolute icon when it comes to, again, when some of the best comedies out there, especially with How I Met Your Mother, once again, Mr. Josh Radnor here. I think I have most of the How I Met Your Mother performers except for Neil Patrick Harris is the only one I don't have here. So Josh Radnor, of course, rounding out that group for us. And for him, definitely known for his comedy work on that show, but also some really underrated drama performances he's also done in the form of Rise and Mercy Street. Pretty underrated shows that I talked about again in the filing filmography video on this channel. Now, for me, I would put him probably in the good tier. I don't think he's quite to the level of some of his co-stars on Himium. I think Ted as a character was definitely sort of towards the bottom of the pack for most people, and I would definitely agree with that assessment. And I think his versatility, again, not really the strongest category either. The technical ability on him is a little bit hit or miss at times. I think he can do some stuff really well, but sometimes he tries too hard with some of his performances as well. Definitely on stuff like Mercy Street, you can see that. Definitely a unique setting for him. It's a historical show that takes place in a hospital, so definitely a more dramatic performance, but not exactly suited to his particular skill set, I think, at times. So not the worst performer out there at all. Definitely a still pretty solid one, but just not reaching the peaks of some of these other actors we have on this list today. I'm going to put him in the good category. Following him, one of the most iconic actresses in all of TV comedy, Miss Julia Louis-Dreyfus here, easily going to go in the A1 tier alongside all these other great actors and actresses. Of course, known for Elaine on Seinfeld there, as well as on The New Adventures of Old Christine, as well, the title character there, Christine, and then rounding her filmography out here, Veep as Selena Myers there, one of my favorites. Just an all-around great, suitable actress for when it comes to any of these awesome sitcoms that she's done. Also one of the most sustainable and consistent actresses on this list as well. All of those different shows taking place in different decades where she has just reigned supreme in the ratings and has just been, sustainably super popular over time, whether it's Seinfeld that started all the way back in the late 80s and 90s, New Adventures of Old Christine in the 2000s, or Veep in the 2010s. There, 3 decades of fantastic work from her. A1 tier is definitely appropriate for her talent. Following her, we have Kaley Cuoco here, another one who primarily does comedy there, as well as a drama in the form of The Flight Attendant, definitely her most recent effort, and I think it paid off very well for her. Definitely a different sort of style with the more serious tone that show has, but also primarily known for characters like Bridget on 8 Simple Rules and Penny on The Big Bang Theory, one of my favorites. Definitely going to place her in the A1 tier as well. Again, versatility, not the best here. I think The Flight Attendant, definitely a step in the right direction for her, kind of expanding on the sort of tropes that she usually plays into. That's a main criticism that a lot of other people have for her, is that all her characters from the past kind of feel the same. I would disagree with that, but I can see why some people would argue that characters like Penny and Bridget kind of playing into the dumb blonde stereotype, if you will. But I think that's what she does well, and those characters are very fun on their respective shows there. But like I said, The Flight Attendant definitely kind of breaking out of that shell for her, which is very nice to see. All around a very, very talented actress as well, going in the A1 tier. Now, following her, this next performer, a little bit more polarizing for most people. This is Kat Dennings here, who I primarily known through Two Broke Girls. They're one of my favorite sitcoms that I will defend day in and day out. I know a lot of people disagree with me on that, would probably argue that it's one of the worst shows on TV, but I absolutely love it and has been a favorite of mine for a very long time now. And then as well, she's also done shows like WandaVision as Darby Lewis there, and that was a really good performance from her in a drama, again, kind of breaking out of her standard shell, kind of getting away from the main trope of characters that she tends to play. But one show in particular that she did that I was not that big on was Dollface. This was a recent sitcom she did on Hulu, and after the first episode, I had to check out of this one. I was not a fan of this at all. It was very kind of avant-garde, experimental type humor. Did not really suit her well at all. It was just kind of a very crazy, bizarre show that had no real story, no real plot to it, just nothing to hook you into it like some of her others did, and I was just not a fan of it at all. So that's definitely going to bring her down a little bit, but I think the other two, at least for me, are definitely going to keep her at least in the great tier. I think she's pretty versatile as well. Definitely one of my favorites going forward there. Kat Dennings in the great tier for me. Next up here, we have another person who's a little bit more polarizing here with some of her shows. Miss Katy Mixon here, primarily known for her work on American Housewife, Mike and Molly, and Eastbound and Down. Now, by no means would I say that she is a bad actress here. In fact, I think that overall she is a pretty solid actress. That being said, I do think a lot of the roles that she ends up taking, whether intentional or not, are definitely a little bit one-dimensional. That's pretty much my only main criticism with her, but it is a big one enough that she is only going to get a good tier status here. I don't think that it's necessarily on her all the time. I think that's just what her skill set is most capable of. Characters like Victoria, for example, on Mike and Molly, one of my favorite shows of all time there, definitely just seem a little bit more watered down or a little bit more underwhelming comparably to some of the other characters that they have on the show who I think are just better written overall. And unfortunately, that is going to bleed out on her because she is the one performing this character overall. American Housewife, kind of in the same boat there. And then Eastbound and Down is April. I think that's probably her best performance. That shows a little bit more, allows her to do a little bit more stuff there. It's on HBO, so they can get away with some stuff on that one, which is definitely a nice, refreshing sort of tone for her to take on. But like I said, for the most part, I think most of the characters she plays are just a little bit flat, not as best when it comes to the writing on some of them. So that's really my main criticism with her, to where she is going to go in the good tier, excuse me. Following her, another one that is going to go in that good tier status is going to be Miss Katey Sagal here. Now, this is another one that you could definitely make an argument for that she should be higher. For me, this one just comes down to a balance of where I would place all of her shows. I think her best show, in my opinion, is definitely 8 Simple Rules here, which would certainly go pretty high on this list. One that I think is kind of in the middle there, not the best, not the worst, is Futurama, where she does the voice work on that animated show. And then one that I was just not really a fan of, despite a lot of people absolutely loving this one, was Sons of Anarchy. I did recently check this one out for an upcoming project. I watched the first episode for it, and I gotta tell you, I was just not very impressed whatsoever. Shout out to Mike for recommending this because he is a massive fan of Sons of Anarchy. Mike, if you're watching this, I'm sorry, man. It was just not my cup of tea, but I'm glad that you guys are enjoying it because I hear really, really good things about it. I was just not really into this one. It's more of a crime drama, which is not really usually my style. I usually like more comedies, more sitcom, lighter type stuff like that, which I think she does very, very well. But with this dramatic performance, I just was a little bit underwhelmed personally. So that is my main criticism with her there. So again, it's going to balance out there. I have one that I think is great, one that I think is just kind of okay, and one that I was not really impressed with. They're going to balance out in the middle and say good tier for Katey Sagal. Another one that kind of falls in that same trap there, despite having the versatility locked and loaded here with one in each category, a sitcom, an animated show, and a drama, is Kristen Bell here, pretty much for the same reasons as Katey Sagal. We have an amazing sitcom here in the form of The Good Place, super inventive. Of course, Michael Schur from Parks and Rec and Brooklyn Nine-Nine back to write and produce this one and did a fantastic job with the casting as well, with Kristen Bell playing the lead Eleanor on that show. Fantastic character for her. We have one that's just kind of okay there with Central Park on Apple TV, where she does the voice work there, and then a drama that, again, I was just not impressed with, despite the large fan base behind it in the form of Veronica Mars there. Definitely a show that I think just hasn't really aged all that well. Just a show that I think has kind of stumbled to kind of keep up with the more modern sort of take on dramas there, with the sort of crime teen drama aspect to it. A lot of those older 2000s sort of teen dramas like 90210 or Dawson's Creek or what's another one, like some of those ones that you'd see on the WB, right? Seventh Heaven, you could kind of fall into that category as well. I think all of those types of shows just really haven't aged all that well by comparison to the immense amount of fantastic stuff we've seen in just the last decade or so. And unfortunately, Veronica Mars, I think, definitely an example of that. And Kristen Bell, just very, very underwhelming on that show. So like I said, for the same reasons as Katey Sagal, they're going to kind of put her in the middle of the pack there at the good tier. Following her, we have another individual who primarily does voiceover work on several great animated shows such as Gravity Falls and Bob's Burgers, as well as the live-action performance on the sitcom The Last Man on Earth alongside Will Forte, this one at Kristen Schaal. Now, I definitely would put her in the A1 tier, if only for the fact that I really, really love Louise on Bob's Burgers. Definitely my favorite character for the entire show, as well as Mabel on Gravity Falls. They're similar to H. Jon Benjamin. Kind of rare to see a performer who can do the voice acting so well, so consistently, and do it so on so many different projects there, whether it's more of an adult animated show like Bob's Burgers or one for the Disney Channel like Gravity Falls there. The versatility is really, really amazing in my opinion. And then Last Man on Earth as well. Very, very underrated show where she played Carol on that. Very, very fun performance alongside Will Forte as well. More of an apocalyptic type take on the sitcom genre there. Definitely highly recommend that one too. A1 tier, I think, is very, very appropriate for her talents. Next up here, we have yet another individual from That 70s Show here, Miss Laura Prepon here, primarily known for her performance as Donna on that show, alongside Eric, of course. And then we also have her from Orange is the New Black and the reoccurring role of Karen on How I Met Your Mother. For me, she's going to go in the great tier, kind of similar to what I said earlier about some of these other actors, that I think she just doesn't have the same sort of peaks as some of her co-stars. I think Donna kind of got lost in the mix at times on That 70s Show. On How I Met Your Mother, of course, Karen is probably one of the more hated sort of girlfriends or love interests of Ted on the show. so definitely one of my least favorites, but she plays into that very, very well. The raw sort of, talent that she has there, I think, is strong. Just some of the characters that she chooses to play, not always the most liked or the most, entertaining characters on their respective shows. But I think that raw versatility is definitely one of her stronger attributes there as an actress. So it's all going to balance out in the great tier for me. Next up here, this individual, I really wanted to have someone rank on all of these different tiers here. Whenever I do a tier list, I try to make it as balanced as possible because as much as I love praising and talking about how great all of these actors are, we definitely always want to have a balance to that and, have some pros and cons to go alongside one another. So we needed someone to occupy that bottom of the barrel tier here, and this individual is my pick for it. Mr. Leslie Jordan here. I have never been a fan of his work whatsoever, whether it's on Hearts of Fire back in the 90s, The Cool Kids with David Alan Grier, or the infamous Call Me Kat, which he is currently on, which I think is atrocious, easily one of the worst sitcoms of all time. And unfortunately, his character of Phil there, really obnoxious, never been a fan of it whatsoever, alongside, of course, Mayim Bialik on that show as well. Leslie Jordan just never really appealed to me, just always thought that he was very irritating, very annoying. His characters are usually just, very high-pitched, very gay as he is on real life, which is not a criticism by any means, but it just doesn't make for a very entertaining character when that's their only personality. Plenty of examples of that can be found on TV as a whole there. Just, all these characters that's their whole entire, attribute. That's the only thing that they're recognized for. And unfortunately, he just plays into that trope way too often for me, and I'm just not a fan of it whatsoever. So for me, he's going to go in that infamous bottom of the barrel tier, pretty justifiably there for the amount of just crap shows that he has been on in his career. Going back to a more positive light for this next actress here, Lindsay Shaw, who's another one that I know from the Nickelodeon days, specifically on Ned's Declassified here. She's also on the short-lived sitcom Aliens in America, which I think was very, very underrated from the mid-2000s on the CW. And then most recently, she's also been on Pretty Little Liars, which was a massive show back in the day, the last couple of years or so, for the teen drama sort of genre as well. I'm going to put her in the good tier. Nothing spectacular, that would rise her up alongside any of these other really, really top tier performers, but certainly nothing bad either. I really like Mose, of course, on Ned's Declassified, probably one of the more iconic characters from the Nickelodeon era, of course. Overall, pretty consistent in my eyes, so I think a good tier is appropriate for her. Next up here, the other big ticket actor alongside Mr. Bryan Cranston, we had to, of course, include Michael C. Hall here. Without a doubt, one of the best when it comes to drama performances, whether it's on Dexter, 6 Feet Under, you name it. This guy does it all, and he is easily going in the God tier status. I've only seen a few episodes of each Dexter and 6 Feet Under, but I can safely say some of my favorite work that he has ever done there as David Fisher and, of course, Dexter Morgan there. He's also on the Disney show Star vs. the Forces of Evil. Shout out to Matt, one of his favorite cartoons, where he plays one of the villains there in a voice role. So, again, versatility levels are through the roof. They're very, very innovative to take a, really, really high class, mature quality drama actor and put him in a voice role for a kids comedy show. Very, very unique sort of situation that he finds himself in, but I think he does a great job there as well. Definitely worthy of that God tier title. Following him, another actor that I think easily has the versatility locked and loaded here, Nick Offerman on either Parks and Rec, Axe Cop, or Pam and Tommy, the new biopic from Hulu there. Easily another one that's going to go in the God tier status. Has all the genres locked and loaded. It gives great performances across the board, with my personal favorite easily being that of Ron Swanson here on Parks and Rec. Easily one of the most quotable characters of all time there. Easily would rank in my personal top 10. My favorite from Parks and Rec. I could talk about him all day long. Nick Offerman here, an absolute standout on all the shows he's worked on. God tier is certainly a appropriate spot. Following him, we have someone who, again, I don't think is necessarily the best nor the worst here. Kind of similar to Lindsay Shaw. He kind of ranks in between the sort of meh and good tier. But again, I wanted to kind of fill out this tier list appropriately and have at least one person in each of these categories. So he is going to be the token, sort of, just okay meh sort of actor for this list. Oliver Hudson here, probably best known for his work on Rules of Engagement, The Cleaning Lady, and Splitting Up Together alongside Jenna Fisher, who you might know from The Office there. That show in particular, Splitting Up Together, I think is really, really bad. Rules of Engagement, I think, is pretty good. Not the best, but certainly a very solid show. We talked about earlier with David Spade, of course, on that one too. And then The Cleaning Lady, as I've talked about on my podcast in the past, just kind of okay. Definitely not the best, but not the worst either. Just kind of fits in that sort of middle category overall. And I think that's where Oliver Hudson in general just kind of performs at. Just kind of that middle, just meh, sort of tier there. So that is where he's going to go for this tier list. We are coming down to the last few performers here, beginning with Rashida Jones here, another one who I think is very, very versatile on all of the great sitcoms that she's been a part of, whether it's Parks and Rec, Black AF, or Angie Tribeca. I think some of the shows that she's done just haven't been to the peak of some of the ones that she did earlier. I think Angie Tribeca and Black AF definitely did not reach the same peaks as Parks and Rec, and really outside of those three, she hasn't really done that much, but still a very, very solid performer nonetheless. She has great chemistry with, of course, Amy Poehler on Parks and Rec there, and Leslie Knope on the show. Very, very fun sort of couple of friends there to watch, to go through the crazy adventures on Parks and Rec. And overall, just a very, very fun actress to watch for the most part. I think a good tier is sufficient for her. Following her, we have another one who is a icon when it comes to some of the biggest dramas on TV, whether it's The West Wing from back in the day, recently on 911 Lone Star, he is the lead, and then of course has the versatility locked in with a outstanding performance once again on Parks and Rec here. We have Mr. Rob Lowe, easily going to go in the A1 tier for me. Chris on Parks and Rec, one of the characters that they bring in sort of halfway through the show, or kind of later in the show, alongside Ben, of course, and they just make the show really, really fun for those last few seasons, in my opinion. Rob Lowe just brings so much energy to his performance and so much versatility to his performance as well. And then, like I said, his dramatic chops here as well on either The West Wing or 911 Lone Star absolutely give him some incredible performances on those as well. A1 tier is where I'm going to place him. For this next actor, this is going to be another one that I think is going to be quite controversial on where I'm going to place him in comparison to where a lot of people probably would for this particular circumstance with this tier list. We have Mr. Steve Carell up next. And if you know me, if you've seen videos in the past before, you might know that I am just not very big on probably his most successful show to date, The Office here. It is one of the biggest, without a doubt, sitcoms, TV shows, entertainment, pieces of art in all of the media, entertainment, whatever. It is just an absolute juggernaut when it comes to being recognizable, being praised left and right, and all of it I just do not like. I'm just simply not a fan of it. I do like mockumentaries and I do like workplace comedies, but for some reason The Office just does not hit for me. And Michael Scott, I think, is a very, very overrated character in my opinion. Outside of that, he's also done some other notable shows like Space Force on Netflix, which I thought was a big, big disappointment, as well as The Morning Show on Apple TV, which I also thought was pretty underwhelming overall. I really like Steve Carell in a movie format. I think he's made some of the funniest comedies of the 2000s, specifically The 40-Year-Old Virgin. Me and my buddies always are referencing, talking about that movie, one of my favorites from that era. But for whatever reason on TV, he just does not really hit the same way. I think a lot of his characters are just very, very overrated, like I said, especially Michael Scott. So for me, definitely going to be a very polarizing placement in the bad tier. Just not really my cup of of tea on TV for whatever reason. Just does not really hit for me. But of course, feel free to disagree with me in the comments. I'm sure that one is definitely going to raise some suspicions from you guys. I know a lot of people out there love Steve Carell, but I am just not one of them, at least when it comes to his TV performances. Next up here, we have an absolute icon when it comes to comedies. Once again, another standout performer all throughout great decades of TV sitcoms, whether it was on Cheers back in the 80s, Becker in the 90s, or The Good Place most recently. Mr. Ted Danson's up next. And once again, I'm going with A1 tier for him. We have quite a few in that A1 tier. The only thing they're missing again is the versatility. He's never really done a dramatic performance on TV or voiceover work all that much. Definitely sticks to what he knows best, but what he does is fantastic. They're definitely a tough call on which of his characters in particular are my favorite, whether it's Sam from Cheers or Michael from The Good Place. Gun to my head, I think I would take Michael just by a hair, but Sam, of course, is another iconic character, the classic bartender from Cheers there. He played so well for over 11 seasons, which is outstanding there. Ted Danson, easily one of the best when it comes to comedy. We are down to our final two actors here, starting off with Tracy Spiridakos, probably best known for her work recently on Chicago PD as Detective Haley Upton here, but she's definitely done some shows in the past before her big break there. The drama Revolution, which a lot of people really enjoyed. I, again, think that this is a very overrated show, unfortunately. Just not really for me. And then I didn't actually know about this show in particular until last night when I was researching for this video here. Revolution and Chicago PD I've seen before, and I knew that she was a pretty well-known actress, so I wanted to include her on this list. But I was trying to find a third show for her, something, that I could kind of round out her list with, and I managed to stumble across this show late last night on IMDb here when I was going through her filmography. It's called Majority Rules. It was a Canadian sitcom set up for their Canadian station Teletoon, which is owned by the Cartoon Network company. So it kind of falls in line with like a Disney or Nickelodeon type show, a teen, kids sitcom essentially, about a teenager who inexplicably becomes the mayor of this small town in Canada and decides all the rules. It sounds like an all right setup, but when I tried to watch a few clips from it, I can safely say this is one of the worst shows I have ever seen in my entire life, and the rating on IMDb reflects that perfectly with a 3.3 out of 10 there. Easily one of the lowest rated shows in any genre that I've ever seen IMDb rank. I've had my problems with IMDb in the past, but I can safely agree with them here. This show is simply atrocious here. Pair that with a very underwhelming performance on Revolution, and despite my love for Chicago PD, I think that Haley is just not a very good character. I've never really been a fan of her and Jay as a couple. You guys know me, I'm an Adam and Kim guy all the way. Never really been a fan of their shipping. And, again, I think that her acting here on just that technical, side of it is just not very good. It's just not up to par with the rest of her co-stars on any of these shows here. I'm going to place her in the bad tier alongside Steve Carell once again. Just not really big on any of these shows, but Majority Rules was really the nail in the coffin there. If you ever happen to stumble across this show, a clip from it, take a minute, check it out. It is just so awful. You'll get a good laugh out of it for how cheesy her performance is on there. Definitely a bad actress in my opinion. And as we end here with our final performer of the video here, Mr. Tyler James Williams here, primarily known for his work on sitcoms like Everybody Hates Chris and recently Abbott Elementary as the character Gregory, easily my favorite on that show so far, as well as a dramatic role as Noah on The Walking Dead, easily one of the most underrated characters on that show in particular, another one that I absolutely love. He's going in the God tier status. Again, the versatility there up very high. Definitely just underrated in general. Outside of TV, I've seen plenty of his movies as well, and there's really nothing that I've seen him in that I did not enjoy at least a little bit of, and that's a very rare feat with me. I'm usually pretty cynical, pretty I like to criticize and definitely have some of that in me when it comes to just reviewing media and stuff. But he's just one that I've never seen anything that I did not like. So based on that alone, he definitely deserves that God tier status. So that is it for the video, everybody. That is my completed tier list here of great TV actresses and actors here. Let me know your thoughts on this one in the comments if you agree or disagree with me. As always, if you have any other suggestions for great tier lists that you would like to see me do in the future, perhaps a part 2 to this one, I would love to do, maybe with even Mike or Matt as a collab here. I'm sure they would be thrilled to do one with me. They as well love to talk about TV and TV actresses. So hit me up in the comments, guys, if you want to do something like that for sure. Other than that, have a great rest of your day, everybody. Take care, and we'll see you in the next video.